and welcome to the Cello Doll YouTube channel. If you've clicked on this video, then congratulations on your upcoming trip with your instrument. It is always so exciting when you get to travel as a part of your music career. But of course, we want to be sure that when that day comes for that flight, that it is a smooth, safe, and easy process. Now, this is part 2 in my 2-part series on how to travel with a cello on an airplane. If you haven't seen part 1, I'll put a link here so you can easily click on it, and I highly recommend starting there. I cover everything you have to do from purchasing tickets to preparing your cello case, all sorts of tips on things to do before the day of your flight. If you've already seen it and you feel confident in your trip prep, then let's go on to tips for the day of your flight with your cello. Please note that these tips come from my experiences flying domestic within the US. If you're flying outside of the United States, you really need to make sure you triple check the regulations of the country you are going to be traveling within, because it's very likely that they will have different protocols around musical instruments. So now we have come to the day of the flight. You are going to look like such a cool jet setter, going onto the airplane with your instrument for your important musical endeavor. Take a deep breath. You are prepared for this. And now we're going to talk about what to expect on the day of your flight. So now it is time for Cello Doll story time number 2 at the airport. I had done everything we have discussed up until now, and I am going into line for security. And I get stopped even before entering the line, and someone said, "That is too big, you're gonna have to check it. You can't bring that on the plane." So at that point, I take out both of my tickets and I show it to the attendant saying, "I actually bought a ticket for the cello. It has a seat on the airplane. No, you're gonna have to check it." And it seemed that regardless of what I was trying to tell them, I was getting the same response. And this is something very important. Be calm, breathe, and be kind. Because if there's a misunderstanding and tensions start to rise, of course, it's very normal to be frustrated when you're getting met with opposition about this, but people are more likely to help you if you're kind. So really hold on to your patience if you encounter something like this. So I was starting to feel kind of anxious, but I was really trying to be calm and level with my voice. And one of the attendants at the check-in desk saw what was going on, and thank goodness they came over and they said, "Hi, what seems to be the issue?" We were explaining what was happening, and this third person said, "Oh, she has 2 tickets. She's fine. She can go." And the person said, "Oh," and I'm thinking, that's literally what I have been telling you. But because they heard it from a fellow staff member, they were more likely to listen, understand, and see it as something that was allowed. Don't be afraid to ask for a superior's opinion. In that situation, knowing what I know now, I probably would have just gone back to the desk and asked someone for help rather than going back and forth in the moment and getting frustrated. So don't be afraid to ask for somebody from the airline check-in counter to come and help and give you some extra advocacy as you try to get through security. Now, when you're going through security, celli might not fit on the belt and through the machine. They might need to do a handheld scan where basically they use something like a wand, or they might have to open up the case and look at the instrument. It is hard to watch my instrument being carried because it's mine and it's so fragile, and please be careful. If they do have to carry it, show them how to hold the case. Ask if you can go with. You might be able to, you might not, but have not had a problem. And generally, I can always see celli when I'm in security, even if they need a manual scan. Then when you get through security, go find your gate and see if there's anybody at the counter. My other tip, and again, it goes back to the theme of making things easier for everybody, ask if you can go on the plane for early boarding. This is usually a group that is called before they start calling out group numbers or group letters. This will give you extra time to get your cello situated in its seat. Because if you board with everybody else and you are trying to finagle the case and get it at the right angle, and then there's just a traffic jam of people behind you in the airplane's aisle, again, it's gonna be a stressful situation. People are gonna be wondering, oh, what's taking so long, and all of these things. So it really works for the convenience of the crew and the passengers for you to board early. I would say 95% of the time I've been allowed to board early, or at least earlier than what my ticket says. When it's time for you to board the plane with your instrument and you get to the entrance of the plane, ask a flight attendant for a seatbelt extension. They usually have a handful of them on the airplane, and the extension allows you to have more flexibility in securing your cello case depending on the angle, how the seat is situated. There's a lot of factors, and you don't want to have really tight seatbelt resistance, so always ask for an extender. Now, I got to go on a trip in April with Celli to perform in New York City, and I do have some footage for this next part where I do strap in Celli, so you'll get to see some live action with these upcoming tips. So if needed, put up the seat arms in your row so that you're able to easily slide the instrument through to the window seat. Now, I always rest the top of the case where the scroll is up on the headrest. The cello's body is angled this way so that the lip of the airplane seat is kind of in the bottom 20% of the case. Now, depending on how much room you have, you might be able to lean the cello a little bit more. It really depends, and it's not going to go smoothly the first time, so be patient with yourself. It does take a few tries to get used to it. But as you are situating the cello, find the end of the buckle that is closest to the window, because you can kind of reach under the case to get it. You don't want to reach over because that's very bulky. So kind of have that part come over the case, and you don't want the seatbelt to be putting a lot of tension on the bridge. You really want to avoid having the seat in front of you really squishing the bridge, or to have tight seatbelt tension on the bridge. So in this case, I always prioritize protecting the bridge, and I make it snug, but not super, super tight. So you want to have a tiny bit of wiggle room, also because passengers have not boarded the plane yet. So I've had situations where the person sitting in front of Celli sits down and they totally lower their seat back. And I'm thinking, oh, great. Because the back of the seat is getting really close to Celli. And so sometimes I try to lift Celli a little bit to get the bridge away from the seat in front. Thankfully, I've never had an issue with someone reclining their seat before. But again, kindly advocate for your instrument if you feel that you have to. Next, I would recommend closing the air vent that is above your cello seat. Otherwise, you may have cold air blowing directly onto your instrument's case throughout the entire flight. So that should get you set and ready for the flight ahead. When your flight is done, I usually allow most of the people around me to exit the plane first. But if you really have to make a connecting flight, just try to prep as much as you can ahead of time. When the plane comes to a full stop and people in front of you are starting to disembark, you can undo the cello seat belt, kind of make sure you're able to secure the straps on your case, have a good angle where you can give it leverage into the aisle. That should have you at the end of a smooth trip on an airplane with your cello. All right, my dolls, thank you so much for joining me for today's vlog, and I really hope it provided some helpful information for the next time you find yourself in the airport with your cello. If you have any additional questions about traveling with your cello, please be sure to leave them in the comments below, and I will get to them as soon as I can. Again, thank you so much for being here today. I am the Cello Doll. If you're new here, welcome. And in addition to YouTube, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Happy traveling, my dolls, and we'll see you in a future vlog. Bye-bye.